Esperamos que se abran las embajadas ante la cumbre de las Américas.
There's a Cuban citizen right there saying he is lining up for a U.S. visa, but the embassy is not even open in Havana yet. Past issues are complicating things currently for the administration's stated goal of normalizing diplomatic relations. This week, President Obama and Cuba's Raul Castro are scheduled to meet in Panama at the Summit of the Americas. But oops, Cuba is on the U.S. list of state sponsors of terror, and Cuba says U.S. diplomats won't be allowed to walk the country, travel as they want, or talk to regular Cuban residents. For more on this, we turn our attention to former Congressman Pete Hoekstra. And also joining us is Alina Hernandez, the managing editor of Newsmax.com, also someone who has Cuban background, a lot of experience covering these issues. Alina, it's good to have you with us as always.
Thank you.
All right, so let's talk about this. You would expect some things to come up from the past that might complicate things, but they're talking about real issues now with his past, with Cuba being on the list of state sponsors of terror. How do you see this playing out this week in Panama?
To me, this is now where they're going to get down to the nitty-gritty. It seems as though we need to get some concessions and get them quickly. For example, this idea that U.S. diplomats aren't going to be able to move freely about the island, that can't happen. Human rights issues are something that I would expect to come up fairly soon. We're getting a lot of business activity in Cuba. You saw Netflix is already having some streaming ability there. There's a company that's starting to work on some telecom issues. But I think those of us who really care about what's happening on the island, we want to see significant change. What about free elections? What about human rights? What about bringing more of the money that's going to flow into the island to the average Cuban whose salaries are $15 a month? That just cannot continue.
So what is the process for moving forward on that? What's happened in the last month, and what do you expect to happen in the next 3 months?
Well, in the last month, they've been having meetings mostly about how to largely about setting up the embassies. I don't see significant movement in the next 3 months, but what I'm hoping that will happen fairly quickly is some discussions about the process by which Cubans can apply to move freely about the island and move outside of the island. U.S. citizens being able to come to Cuba without all the red tape that is now required. I mean, the trip to Cuba, the flight is probably under $300. The cost to get there is probably close to $1,200 to $1,500 just in visa applications and the like. So I'd like to see some of that change, in addition to some real concrete movement on human rights. Why can't Cubans go into hotels? Why can't they open up businesses without paying exorbitant taxes to the government?
Alina, I want to ask you, this is the first time the president will actually be meeting with Fidel Castro in person. What will that encounter entail? We've been told that there aren't any personal meetings set aside for them.
My guess is that this will be just very brief discussions. I don't think that you're going to see any sit-down negotiations conducted by Obama and Raul. I think these things will be largely, photo opportunities to sort of symbolize the coming together of the two countries in discussions. I don't think that President Obama is going to be spending golfing with Raul Castro, for example. So I think that these will be very brief encounters.
Well, Alina, I want to get you to weigh in because we expect Rand Paul to announce his candidacy for president, at least for the nomination for the Republican Party. He has broken with his party, saying that he is actually, he's set to announce today, but he's supporting the president on this move. Do you think that might hurt him? Do you think he might be underestimating how important this is?
Not at all. I think that this is, I think polls are indicating that most Americans want access to Cubans and to travel to Cuba. So I think this is probably a fairly brilliant move on his part. I think the Cuban hardline position, its time has come and gone, and I think that he's been that's going to be a help to him.
When you take a look at what is this going to mean to the Cuban people? What are their reactions right now?
I think most of them are taking a wait and see position. They have been through 50 years of Fidel Castro, and they know that every time that there's a slight opening, the door closes very quickly. So I think that they're optimistic, like many people who want to see their relations restored. But Cubans need to eat. They're living, subsistence living right now. They get some stipends from the government.
Lena,
jobs
we'll have to leave it there. We're out of time before we got to get this commercial break. Alina Hernandez with us. We're back here with more on America's Forum. And we welcome you back for another segment to talk about Cuba. We have former Congressman Pete Hoekstra, Miranda Kahn, John Bachman here. Also joining us is Alina Hernandez, the managing editor of Newsmax.com. And Alina, we're seeing now that Rand Paul has announced via the interwebs that he is now running for president. It's up on his website. We are awaiting his announcement coming very soon. Not a surprise to anyone here, but again, you were saying his stance, taking a different tack on Cuba, could really pay dividends come 2016.
Yeah, I don't think Cuba is going to be a huge 2016 issue, but I think for Americans who are interested in foreign policy, it's definitely going to be a bonus. I really don't think that there are, he really has nothing to lose by agreeing with the president on this at all.
I think the interesting thing here is, this morning, the first hour, we spent almost a good portion of the time talking about foreign policy.
Right.
Elena, what does this really say for the election coming up in 2016? Is foreign policy going to be the dominant issue in 2016?
I don't think so. I think you're going to look at things like healthcare is still going to be a big issue. I would say ISIS, certainly in the foreign policy front, what we're doing in terms of terror around the world, the things that we've seen just recently in Kenya, the Charlie Hebdo incident, what's going on with Russia, I think those things will come up. But I think by and large, people are concerned about jobs, the economy, and things like healthcare, much more so than they are about whether Cuba has free elections, to be honest.
Alina, we're hearing reports that President Obama wants to take Cuba off the terror list. How easy of a task do you think that will be?
Well, he can't do that unless he gets, his plan is to do that once he gets a recommendation from the State Department. Cuba has been on the terror list for decades. He said in an interview with Reuters that he was looking to see that the Cubans were engaging in open and free democratic activities as opposed to a repressive regime. And he also wanted to see what the State Department recommended in terms of their activities with regards to terror around the world. My sense is that this is not going to happen before this weekend summit, but it's something that's going to be addressed down the road. So I wouldn't see any kind of removal before the summit. But I think they're going to have to wait and see what the Castro brothers do in terms of opening up or showing some willingness to open up the country to a democratic process.
And that also, since the president is making this proclamation that he wants to see them removed from the state-sponsored terrorist list, of terrorism list, shouldn't we be getting something in exchange from the Cuban government saying that U.S. officials will be allowed to travel freely and Cubans will be able to travel freely and talk to whomever they please?
That's exactly it. I think if we get nothing out of this, then this whole process has been a joke, has just essentially been another way that the Castro brothers are propping up their regime. So I think those of us who are very open to seeing negotiations happen in Cuba are going to be, just wildly disappointed if we get absolutely nothing other than they get more business, more American trade and business in Havana, and the Cuban people get so little of it.
Yeah, I think the president's going to have a wide latitude in terms of taking Cuba off the list of state sponsors of terrorism. Getting a recommendation from the State Department when he's already kind of said, I'd like this to happen. He'll have a lot of latitude. I think eventually that will happen. The real question, and this is again, Alana, what she was referring to, is what will the Cuban people want in return for that? What would they like to see change in their country? And what should the top three things be that the president would be demanding that Cuba change, that the Castro brothers change?
And if you can, Alina, in 20 seconds before we have to go.
I think that what he should be demanding is an electoral process for people. I think he should be demanding free trade without heavy taxation burdens for these people. I think he should be demanding things like, open access to the internet and information.
Things a lot of us here in America take for granted far too often. Not certainly the case in Cuba. Alina Hernandez, managing editor of Newsmax.com with us. Pete Hoekstra, Miranda Khan, John Bachman. We're back with more right after this. We're going to talk with Jeffrey Nathan as jurors deliberate the Boston Marathon bombing trial.